Our speaker tonight, Justen Wack, is a member of this group that went through ILW and just finished up Momentum. And I'd met Justen actually, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. I don't know, something like that, 6-8 months ago. And just talking with him about what he does. He has a company called Saavi, accountability.com, and he's got an amazing story. I know that addictions are a way that we get our heart covered up. We get ourselves covered up, and something about addictions that I know is that love doesn't really get in and it doesn't really get out. Addictions, they have you. And so the idea that he had actually gone through and had his own personal breakthroughs with an addiction, and then has a company that's dedicated to that. I'm going to have him tell you all about his company. Really interested me, because I do know that people can have all the breakthroughs they want, they can have all the experiences that they want, but if they don't find ways to keep their heart pure, I mean, I think, what is it, Proverbs talks about guard your heart, it's the wellspring of life. And knowing, I truly believe that. And I watch people get their hearts free, and it's exciting. Now you got to keep it free. What causes bondage in my life? And so he's going to talk to you about one subject or maybe a few subjects, but I'm going to, at the end of this, I'm going to have you look at some other areas in your life, and maybe we'll do as a little small group depending on the time. But I want to introduce Justen Wack to you. He's the president and founder of Saavi, accountability.com, an awesome young man, and I think has got a great thing for a lot of us who are in personal growth and helping people. Give it up for Justen Wack. Give him a hand.
Thank you. Give a shout out to all my fellow 13 members from the most recent couple weekends, pretty intense weekends. I know you guys all know what that's like, though, being here. But I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and I came out here in 2002 to play soccer at Mid-American Nazarene University. At that point in my life, soccer was pretty much my life, and I came out here on scholarship and took a little bit of a risk. It was the first, I was the first recruiting class in for a new program, and so it looked like everything was, was going to be a pretty solid program, but you really don't know at that point. And so I come out here, and things couldn't have gone better in my college career. We had an amazing team. We brought in a new coach my sophomore year, and so as bad as that could have been, it turned out to be a huge impact on the soccer program, as well as a huge impact on my life personally, and still, still someone that's very key person in my life. And so at that point, he comes in my sophomore year and completely cleans house. There's only a few of us that stay, and my junior year, we end up winning a national championship, which is pretty unheard of for a program that young. I mean, just an unbelievable experience with your friends, with your teammates, and at that point, things were really starting to come together for me personally to pursue my goal, my dream of playing professional soccer. And that being a professional athlete was that was my goal from the time I was this big, and everything was coming together. I was an All-American on that national championship team. We were a part of 2 divisions, and I was among the leading scorers in both in the nation. And so things were really coming together personally, as well as for our team, for our program. And so that next summer, I go out and play in the PDL, which is the Professional Developmental League, and really to kind of further that track. And at that point is kind of when things started to change for me. Personally, I didn't have the numbers that I had always had. Really my entire life. I'd always been a goal scorer, and I went out there and played that year, and really that was kind of my opportunity to make a name for myself. And I had 1 goal the entire year, and it was really disappointing to me. But whole purpose of that league is so that you can come back and you don't actually get paid. You come back and can continue your college career. So my senior year, I have another great year. We win our conference, which is always one of the top in the nation for soccer. And we're top seed in our region, and we end up getting upset in the playoffs. The regional semifinals, we get knocked out, and at that point, it's just kind of throws a whole wrench into things. I have no idea. Is that gonna ruin my professional career? If there was one, and just what does all this look like? And really, for me personally, started to become, I was a senior in college. Life was just kind of kind of up in the air. And so soccer at this point, though, wasn't really the only thing going on in my life. There was also a much more secretive issue going on, which was online porn. And it has been something that started when I was mid-elementary school. I mean, so pretty young, probably 6, 7, 8 years old, and carried through to my high school days and then into college. I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up, going to Nazarene church, and it just wasn't something that was addressed. It was something that you could do kind of in the privacy of a room, and no one else, your parents didn't know, no one else had to know. A thing about pornography, though, that it's not just a spiritual, so many times it's made into a moral and spiritual issue. And where it very much is and can be, and for my life it was, it's not always. And so it's a very important thing to understand that, especially in our culture and kind of the debate that's going on with how big this problem has become, that it's really a moral or a spiritual, or it's an issue of the church versus not the church, and that's really not the case. Witherspoon Institute in 2008 did a 2-year study that was called The Social Cost of Pornography. They studied this for 2 years and recognized, and they released several books on the topic, and talked about in one of these books how it's becoming a sociological issue, not a moral and spiritual issue. So as I'm saying, this is really starting to reshape the way relationships are done. It's really starting to reshape the way we live our everyday lives in a way that never was before, because the internet has brought in such a new dynamic to where you don't have to search out the porn shop. You don't have to go to the grocery store and buy a magazine. You don't have to even put in a video. It's right there on your computer, and so many times now, it's finding you. It's a $92 billion a year industry worldwide, and so they understand the psychological impact and the neurological impact that it's having on us, and especially kids. And so all it takes, and one time you see this stuff, and at some point you're going to come back to it. They understand that just as well as anyone else, and they have the money to put into making sure that this stuff gets in front of your kids. And so another huge thing that we have to recognize about pornography is it's not something that we can avoid. It's not something that in this sexualized culture that we can just say, you know what, we're not going to let our kids see it. We're not going to look at it ourselves. It's not an issue of just what we're looking at on the computer. It's going to find you. It's going to find the TV. Walking the billboards in the airport. Just simply walking down the street, we're bombarded by sexualized messages, and so it really becomes, how do we deal with that? How do you deal with that in your own mind? And where do you let your mind go? Because it's not like alcohol or cigarettes or overcoming an addiction like that, where you can just simply avoid it. This is something it's going to find you. So you can't just avoid the bar. You can't avoid the party. It's going to come and find you, and whether you like it or not, it's going to find your kids. And so it's very, when we're talking about this, a very, very important thing to just kind of look at it through those lenses and understand that it's really become a sociological issue that's not just an issue of the church versus not the church. It's so much bigger than that. Archibald Hart writes about in his book called Thrilled to Death, this idea of anhedonia. And what that is, in my own words, is that we're so overstimulated in our culture by movies, by everything we do, that we're now unable to experience just the simple pleasures, the simple joys in life, and experience them really the way they are meant to be experienced. And so Donald Miller, if you've ever read any of his books, he talks about this. He talks about viewing a sunset on one of his road trips, or a sunrise, I think it was, early in the morning, and how he'd never fully understood until he got away from everybody, got away from his friends, he got away from technology, and he's out there just in the middle of nowhere and watching a sunrise over the mountains for the first time in his life, understanding just the beauty and really the joy that he got out of that experience. Whether it's pornography, whether it's jumping out of a plane, whether it's constantly more and more exciting movies, more exciting video games, it's really hijacking our pleasure system to where we're now unable to experience the pleasure in some of these simple things. And so relate that to relationship now. How are you able to experience these simple joys of holding a hand with your partner, or your girlfriend, your spouse, your boyfriend, whatever, and just simple, a hug, just simple touch. You can't experience the pleasure in these things because our brain is so used to experiencing these for extended amounts of time. This long exposed this rush of dopamine, which is just completely desensitizing our brains to these simple things, like we talked about. And so our economy also plays a role in this. Our economy is designed to have us experience things in excess. It's not enough just to get a quick high, just to see a movie one time. Everything's about excess. Everything's about more. Experiencing more. It's never enough money. It's never, your vacation's never long enough. Your house is never big enough. And so, it's not just the sexual part, but our economy is driving this as well, because we're being filled with these messages that we're constantly needing more and more. And so this plays into pornography as well. One of the damaging things about it, when you look at the effect that the dopamine is having on your brain, and we'll look at a brain scan here in a minute of really just how damaging this is. But it's such a prolonged period of time. It's not, during normal sexual activity, it's a certain amount of time. During porn, you can sit there for hours and hours and hours, and just at some point the click of a mouse starts releasing more dopamine. You start getting excited. It's not even about the images anymore, but you hear that click of the mouse. One of the therapists I work with talks about one of his clients where his wife would leave in the morning, and that's at the time that he would go look at pornography on the computer. So the garage door opening, knowing that she was leaving, then started triggering that excitement in his brain. And so it's becoming so much. We're becoming wired to experience this pleasure in things that really become much more than just the pornography, just the image, just the pornographic image in and of itself. That also starts playing into, Wayne started talking about some of these co-addictions that so many times take place. It's very difficult to deal with one issue, such as pornography, and leave it at that. Because what's going to happen in most cases is that you're just going to replace that with something else. So you might deal with the pornography, you might deal with that one issue in your life, but what else might you replace that with? It could be eating, it could be overworking. It could be volunteering too much at church. You could replace that with things, exercise has become a big one, with things that are, you would think are to be good things, but all you're doing is replacing that addiction. The whole therapeutic process can even be one. And so, what you have to do is really start looking at what's driving this issue, and Wayne touched on that. What is it that below the surface that's causing you to turn to this pornography, that's causing you to turn to overeating, overworking, and deal with that at kind of at the heart level. Because for me in college, that's what I realized, that this is something for me that it was a heart issue that I wanted to be able to overcome on my own. Paul talks about in Romans, I know what I want to do, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. That's what this issue is like for me and so many of my friends, is that I kept coming back to it over and over again, even when I didn't want to. And that's really the point where you start recognizing, okay, this is an issue, this is a problem. And so for me, I needed something that was going to help me overcome that. And I started looking at, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like at times in my life when I'm not struggling with it? What's in place in those moments that's not in other times? And it all came down to relationship. I mean, it's what we it's what we focus on for the entire weekend at Focus Seminar. Is it experiencing this relationship, having these relationships in place, and being able to be your genuine self, being able to be your real self, and have someone reciprocate that, and being able to share these things, these sometimes intimate, very personal things about our lives with somebody else, because that's what's going to get us through it. It's not a program that's going to sit on your computer, whether it's Saavi Accountability or something else. What it is, it's the relationship that's facilitating. And that's the important thing, whether it's pornography, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's smoking. It doesn't matter what it is. If those relationships aren't in place, we're built to relationship soothe, right? And so many times, especially in our culture, and especially men, is that we've become such self-soothers. I mean, I can attest to that. you want to withdraw and deal with it on your own. You don't want that vulnerability of having to open up and deal with that with somebody else. But that's truly the only way. That's what I realized, was that the only way to truly overcome this was not just developing a program that would sit on your computer and help with that, but really look at this overall kind of life accountability. And so I tell people that all the time. With my, you can put Saavi accountability on your computer and it's not going to solve all your problems. But what it's going to do is allow that relationship to develop and give you an opportunity to have that relationship, ask those tough questions. The way the program works is you put it on your computer and then you say, okay, maybe it's pornography, maybe it's online gaming. Online gaming has become huge. We're looking at these same things, this overstimulation of this prolonged period of time. I mean, I've had roommates that have come out of the room 2 hours a day, and the entire rest of that 24-hour period they're in the room playing video games. It's hard for me to relate to that, but through some of my friends I can understand that now. And I can build that and build a system that's going to help with that as well. But once again, it's all relationship. It's all this fantasy addiction. We're withdrawing ourselves from reality, withdrawing ourselves from the difficulties of life, and putting ourselves in situations, whether it's just this pornographic relationship, with this girl on the video screen that you don't know her name, you don't know where she's from, you don't know how old she is, and really you don't care. But you don't have to. It removes that intimacy. Same thing with video games. Is you can play video games, with a whole community of people for years at a time and never actually have a face-to-face communication with them. And so the real draw to that is you can be whoever you want. You don't have to take account of, be responsible for who you are, for everything that's going on in your life. You can withdraw to the comfort of your own computer room, play these games for hours on end, and live a life that's completely outside of the realities of the difficult situations that you're facing. And so in developing this program, I wanted to develop something that was not just for pornography. That was my struggle, but also for games. Maybe it's online gambling too. Give parents a tool to, maybe it's something like watching for things like suicide, or in the Columbine incident where they're researching how to make bombs online, bomb making. Let the parent get it's all instant. So anytime a violation occurs on your computer, what it does is sends a text message out to your accountability partner, to the parent on the account, and just notifies them. It doesn't stop it. It doesn't block it. All it does is let them know what's going on. Because if we can if our friends, if our family, if our accountability in our lives really know what's going on in our lives, that can change everything. It's not about a piece of technology that sits on the computer, and that's something I really realized when I started developing this program. Because initially, to be honest, I thought that developing this program was going to solve everyone's problems. That will everyone put it on their computer and you'll never struggle with it again. But that's not the reality. I started working with a couple of PhD therapists that just brilliant in this area of sexual addiction, and really taking a look at how do we solve these problems in real life. Someone comes into your office, and how do you walk them through it? What's that process look like? And then let's build a technology to facilitate that, but not be the be-all, end-all, because, once again, it's not the technology. One of the most common questions when you look at this area of pornography is talking about the addictive nature of it. Is how addictive is it really? Is it something that if you're just kind of a casual user, that it's even a problem? Is it like alcohol or smoking, where you can drink or smoke socially and it's not that big of a deal? The reality behind it is that's not the case. The level of addiction that takes place when you're watching pornography and become addicted to pornography is the same of that of heroin or cocaine. Wayne, if you want to pull up we got a brain scan here. You can see here an example of a healthy brain, and then look at a heroin brain next to a pornography brain. And it's that rush of dopamine. What it's doing is actually eating away at those parts of the brain. The mass is still there, but you're essentially brain dead in those areas. So you can see the level of addiction that takes place of a heroin brain next to a pornography brain, and understand that this isn't an issue that is kind of casual use is no big deal. And so we can kind of start to get a handle on, okay, how serious is this issue really? So we can go ahead and turn the lights back on. Thank you. Brains aren't built to be able to handle that much. I mean, there's normal amounts in excitement or in sexual activity that we're meant to experience. And when you're sitting there in front of a computer for hours and hours on end, like I was talking about earlier, that's when your brain is just getting flooded with this dopamine, among other chemicals as well. But it's not built to handle that. And so so then you see the effects of what that does. And so now what else does that do? It starts affecting the relationships, your ability to relate, because what are you really looking for? I mean, it's all about this intimacy, right? A lot of times sexual addiction, especially now, is being dubbed intimacy disorder, as opposed to calling it sexual addiction. And I mean, I would tend to agree with that. That's really what is it that you're seeking out? It's this intimacy. It's this false intimacy that you can. It feels good. It feels good for a short period of time. But then what happens afterwards? As high as your brain goes on, the excitement level is going to drop equally as low. So then you actually go into a depression afterwards. And the only way to come back out of that is what? Go back and get more. So you see how this addictive cycle starts taking place, and over a period of time, something that you're not looking forward to going, get in front of the computer and looking all night, but yet that's what happens night after night. Well, you can start to see why. Talk about the 4 A's of how dangerous pornography is. It's this anonymous, it's accessible, it's affordable, and a lot of times it's accidental. And affordable in most cases even being free. And so you can sit and now, when you're talking about sexual issues in particular, whether it be pornography or just an all-out sex addiction, compulsive, constant affairs, and is that it's the highest natural high that you can experience as a human. So you don't have to inject anything, you don't have to drink anything. It's the highest natural high you can experience, and it's natural. And so the fact that you can get that high in the privacy of your own room by yourself, without having to interact with anybody else, without having to go find a drug dealer or go to the liquor store, it makes it just that much more dangerous. We see this, a lot of the stats, you'll see that the use is higher inside the church than it is outside the church. A lot of people don't believe it, but then even escalate that from inside the church to a Christian to now a pastor or somebody in a leadership role. You see this happen with Ted Haggard, not porn in particular, but the same process taking place where it's because of the amounts of adrenaline that are being mixed with this dopamine. Dopamine and adrenaline are just a deadly cocktail of chemicals. That's what's so highly addictive. That's that high that you get, that you constantly crave and want to come back for. And so when you're somebody inside the church that knows that it's wrong, you have a moral stance against it. You truly believe that looking at porn is wrong. Now there's higher levels of adrenaline being released because of that forbidden fruit factor. This is something I shouldn't be doing. And yet, so now it starts becoming actually chemically more exciting to you than somebody who doesn't feel it's wrong. Escalate that to a pastor, to a leader, and someone who now their entire career and ministry is on the line. And if they get caught with this, it's going to be a pretty big issue. You can imagine that rush of adrenaline that's being mixed and paired with this dopamine. So they're feeling a higher high than somebody who doesn't feel like it's a big deal. So you can see. It's kind of the perfect storm of factors that start playing into just how addictive this stuff really is, and start really separating it from looking at things like alcohol or cigarettes or weed or whatever. What are some ways that to be able to overcome this? I mean, we've all been through Focus. We all understand what it's like to live on contract, what it's like to to be open and connect with other people. So how does that relate to being able to overcome this issue? It's because it's all about relationship, right? I mean, that's what I found out really early on in developing Saavi Accountability, was it's all about facilitating this relationship. And so being able to bring that into the picture and facilitate that connection, that's what Saavi Accountability does. It's really not about the technology, it's about that connection that it's facilitating. And so using that in a position where maybe porn is your struggle. Maybe that's the thing that you turn to escape the struggles of your day-to-day life. Maybe it's not, but at some point there's a good chance that it's gonna seek you out, because we can't avoid it on the computer, we can't avoid it in our culture. And so to have something in place, to have a program in place is great, but to have a relationship, to have friends, close friends in your life that you can call up at any time of the day and say, hey man, I'm struggling with this. So many times the accountability relationship is a bunch of guys at church that get together Monday mornings for coffee and ask each other a series of questions and say, hey, how are you doing with it? It's almost this babysitter mentality that I'm gonna kind of babysit you through these issues in your life, as opposed to, you know, and not to say that that's wrong, but I think it goes beyond that, and starting to kind of see how this is all just a learning experience. I'm not coming to you today as this big expert, but just someone who's been through it and experienced these things. And so, I mean, this is something in the last couple months, recognizing the journey that my accountability partner and myself have been on, where it's no longer him calling. He's not getting instant text messages now telling him that I'm looking at a porn site because I'm not doing it. But recognizing my triggers is something that I've over the period last couple of years started being able to do. So you need to recognize what it is that's triggering you to look at that pornography, to get that drink, to smoke that cigarette. What is it that's causing you to do that? And when you start feeling these things coming on, reaching out to your accountability. Accountability is a two-way street. You can't rely on somebody else to really babysit you through that. And I say babysit in kind of a negative way, but really that's what it is. So it's gotten to the point where recognizing my triggers. Anytime I come and present this stuff, for me, a period of a couple days before and a couple days after are when I'm at my weakest. I can't really tell you why, but that's one thing I've recognized. And so for me, when I have these like a situation tonight where I'm sharing this stuff with you, a couple days before I start feeling it coming on, and at that point I reach out to my accountability partner. It's not him calling me, asking me. I'm reaching out to him saying, look, I can start to feel this coming on. I'm going to need your help over these next couple days. And those are the days that he calls. So say, hey, call me once a day, text me once a day, and just ask. So understanding the relationship that needs to take place and not placing this huge burden on somebody else and saying, I've got this issue. And at first that's okay, it's okay. But over the period of time, that's gonna fizzle out. And so we need to understand taking responsibility for our own actions and understand that this is something that it's going to fall back on you. And when you start recognizing it, figure out what your triggers are. And at that point, reach out and say, hey, I'm struggling. You know, I'm going to need your help. It's tough. It's not easy. It's, you know, if you're sitting in the room today and you're struggling with this, overcoming it is not going to be something that's easy. It doesn't matter if it's pornography. It doesn't matter if it's alcohol. It doesn't matter if it's you know, compulsive masturbation. It doesn't matter if it's cigarettes. It doesn't matter what it is. Overcoming these issues, overeating, is going to be a difficult thing to do. But you have to take it one day at a time. And one thing I've learned, because I haven't been perfect through this process, but learning that it's a one day at a time kind of thing. Thinking about it any more than that, I've found for me is just overwhelming. And so, you know, just taking it one day at a time and really being able to lean on those relationships, having those healthy relationships in your life that you can lean on and turn to in that moment. Instant online accountability program that lets the user define whatever, they set their own standards for their house. And so whether, like I said, it could be gaming, it could be gambling, it could be pornography. You could want to watch for things like suicide, for bomb making. Whatever the standards that you've set for your house is completely custom to you. Anytime those standards are violated on any of your computers, you as the parent or whoever you've defined as your accountability partner or partners receive an instant text message, an instant email 10-20 seconds later letting them know what website you went to, what computer, which user on that computer, so that in that moment of weakness when you really need it the most, that phone call can come and provide that support for whatever issue you're struggling with. All about facilitate. Everything we're doing is about building that relationship. And a lot of it's educational. A lot of it's helping people understand the importance of that relationship, what that relationship needs to look like, how vulnerable and how open you really need to be to get through this. Because the whole reason that this whole thing started for you in the first place was your inability to experience intimacy in real life. And so now you're turning to something else to get that high.
Focus is about community. We know these types of issues only grow stronger in isolation. And that's why we know we have the right ingredients when we're involving each other and connecting with each other. This accountability is so important. I'm going to encourage each one of us to install SaaviAccountability.com and make sure that our homes are safe for our children
and we have the accountability we need to be successful in our lives.